From climate alarmism to climate realism, as Energy Secretary Chris Wright says, climate change is a side effect of building the modern world. Banks and businesses seem to be finally getting on board with this.
But moving from unrealistic promises, greenwashing, lies, and environmental fear-mongering risks some engaging in green hushing, purposely keeping quiet about sustainability actions.
Our next guest says climate solutions come with their own set of costs. You can read his op-ed, Time to Pull the Plug on Corporate Virtue Signaling, on foxnews.com. And joining us now, and Brian and I are both huge fans of Bjorn Lomborg's work. He's Copenhagen Consensus President. Bjorn, so great to see you. I'm sorry for making Copenhagen sound like it's a redneck word. Bjorn, what are you concerned with in terms from greenwashing to then kind of burying these kind of what corporations are doing now?
Well, the real problem is for a long time, corporations have been saying, oh, we're going to be so green. And they got lots of applause and everybody said, oh, this is great in Davos and stuff. And of course, it's not what businesses mostly should be doing. But now with Trump and everything else, people are sort of realizing, oh, wait, this is not a good idea. So they've stopped talking about it, but they're still doing a lot of it. And so actually a new survey of about 4,000 sustainability people in these big corporations said, yeah, we're going to talk a lot less about it, but we're still going to do it. We're actually going to do a little more. And that's troublesome because this is not what businesses should be doing. They should be in the business of making great products and high profits.
So there's kind of debate out there. Okay, you've got the CEOs of these companies. And the question is, do they really believe in the green thing? Were they just doing it because the social pressure was so strong and now they're pulling back because really at the end of the day, they agree with you. They just want to run their business. So what I hear you saying is, in fact, the guys running these businesses really are bought into the green agenda and they will do it again when the political environment lets them speak more freely. Is that what you're saying?
It's hard to know.
Okay.
So a lot of the CEOs, I think you're right, they're sort of saying, I actually want my business to run and drive a profit. But now they've hired so many other people, sustainability experts and everybody else. And of course, if that's your job, you're going to be pushing for doing more of that. And so I think it's important, and that's really what my op-ed was about, it's important for businesses to rein in and say, look, we're not going to be doing this anymore. We're actually going to go back and focus on the stuff that we're good at, namely servicing customers.
This goes to something else that you've written about, that corporations need to focus on creating things, profit, because, and this is another piece that you wrote just recently, the environment improves as nations prosper, and the greatest polluter is poverty. And the movement, and we saw it with John Kerry here in the United States and him talking to sub-Saharan Africa about we're cutting off any funding and financing for you to extract fossil fuels from the earth and basically bring your nations out of poverty. It is keeping nations poor makes the environment worse rather than allowing them to develop into modern societies.
Absolutely. So two things. I wrote this for Earth Day, right? I mean, look, we got to recognize there are environmental problems, and it's great that we get a better environment, but fundamentally you do that when you get rich. You can actually afford to do a lot of this. And as you point out, poverty is the biggest polluter because if you're poor, you quite frankly have other important issues, and so you'll cut down your rainforest or whatever else you need to do. But it also emphasizes, as you just pointed out, that most nations, and especially poor nations, need to get out of poverty by doing what we've done. They want to have access for a lot more energy, and most of that is going to be fossil fuels. Remember, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Europe decided to say, all right, we're not going to go and have energy from Russia. But they didn't say, oh, so we're going to go all green. They actually went to Africa to buy up their fossil fuels because we want to keep our living standards. But they simultaneously told the Africans, but you shouldn't be using it. You should actually go all green. That's just hypocrisy.
Absolutely. Let's move on to this. Watch.
Since the beginning of time, man has yearned to destroy the sun. I will do the next best thing. Block it out.
The Simpsons, as it has done with many things, predicted the future yet again. The UK government approving a geoengineering experiment to block sunlight in an effort to curb climate change. Bjorn.
So it's not as crazy as it sounds.
Okay.
I'm actually going to give it a go here.
Okay.
First of all, there's a problem with climate change. What we're currently trying to do is going to cost us hundreds and possibly thousands of trillions of dollars. So we're not succeeding very well with it, and for obvious reasons, nobody wants to come up with that amount of money. So geoengineering could potentially be an alternative. It is going to cost a lot less. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars, maybe even $100 billion. So 10,000 times cheaper. That's something to look into. And again, it was portrayed in the article that you mentioned, it's portrayed as if it's going to block out the sun and we won't be able to see anything. That's not what it's about. It's blocking out 2 or 3% of sunlight. It's like a tiny shade. So nature's done this a lot of times. Back in 1991, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines blew up and actually did this across the world. It blocked out about 1.5% sunlight. I bet you didn't notice, right? So we know this can work. We're not saying you should do it right now, but it's a good idea to look into.
Can I ask a really, really quick question on this? If you test it on a small scale, does that give you enough evidence to really say what it would do on a larger scale? Right, so you might test it on a small scale here, and you're like, oh, it doesn't look like it has any effects on the ozone layer or anything. You roll it out and you find out, oh my gosh, this has way more network effects than we thought it would.
Yes. I mean, look, this is not just one experiment we should be doing. We should look into this a lot over the next decades. Again, I'm not a geoengineering scientist. I don't know. I think they will learn some of it from it. We should do more. One reason also is, remember, when we get further into the century, if global warming becomes a real problem, and it's so cheap, it seems reasonable that somebody's going to do it. An Indian billionaire, or just a really strong, motivated.
Or Mr.
NGO.
Burns.
Or
Could be
Mr.
Mr. Burns. You
Well,
never know.
he's not real.
Bjorn, thank you.